Hello. This tutorial is going to walk you through the check data feature, the purpose of which is to catch any missing data or any data entry errors, both of which would negatively affect your analysis for anything that uses this ingredient that you're creating. To demonstrate what happens, I've created an ingredient with a very common 100 grams of analysis, and then some nutrient data is missing and other nutrient data is incorrect. What happens, the check data button here in red alerts us that there is some underlying problems with this data. So I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to click this to open the window, and I see here that there are 4 tests. One of these tests checks the calories, one the fat, one the total weight, and one the available carbohydrates. The first 3 tests follow the same logic, which is to compare the values entered with the reasonable estimate based on components. If the estimated value and compared value differ by a large amount, as per the tolerance entered here, then your recipe fails the test and your numbers will appear in red. So let's first look at the calorie test and see why there's a 13% difference. 360 was entered as my calorie value, but the estimated calorie is based on 4497, which means we multiply carbs, protein, fat, and alcohol by 4, 4, 9, and 7 respectively. We see that this is lower, and I can see that the protein value is empty, so I'm going to make a reasonable assumption here and guess that I didn't enter my protein. Turns out my protein value should have in fact been entered as 10, so I'm going to enter that here and let's see what happens. Okay, now there's only a 2.2% difference, which is good and falls inside the appropriate margin of error, so I say we fix the problem. Next, let's look at the fat test. The total amount entered was 8 grams, but the estimate based on the components of saturated, mono, poly, and trans fats says it should be 58 grams. Clearly, this can't be correct. There's a 600% difference here. It's up to you at this point to find out where the error is. Is it the saturated fat or the total fat? In this case, we'll assume that I went back to my original spec sheet and discovered that the sat fat should have been 5 instead of 55. So I'll update that. And we'll see that there is a 0% difference. That's good. The next test is the weight test, which sums up approximates. These are the major components that contribute weight. Now you can see that there's a discrepancy here and some missing values here. Assuming that the protein, carbs, and fat values are correct, it's one of these that we're missing data for. You know, about 99% of the time it's going to be water that's missing. This is important, especially if you're going to be accounting for processing and adjusting for moisture losses. I'm going to enter my missing water weight of 30, and now the total is 98, which is pretty good. Probably missing some ash values too here, but I'm going to skip that for now. The last test that I'm going to look at is the available carbohydrates. This is applicable to EU and Mexico labeling, where the carb value does not include fiber. This is showing up in red because I don't have a value entered for the available carbohydrates. Now I can go back over here and calculate nutrients. And if I click on carbohydrates available, calculate that, and it shows up as 0% difference. So we know that that's been fixed. Okay, now we can see here that everything is in green and the check data button is in green. So we are good to go. And that concludes this tutorial. Thank you.